Incarcerated youth, a topic that often goes overlooked in conversations about America's judicial system. Approximately 60,000 kids under the age of 18 are incarcerated every single day. But what does that mean on a deeper level? Out of 100,000 kids, 2,167 will be arrested in their life. And out of those, 152 will be put in juvenile prisons. Out of those who are incarcerated, 114 of those kids are held for non-violent charges. More than half end up with a lower academic achievement level and end up having a harder time integrating back into society as a result. Isn't there an issue here?
I think that detention centers have a goal to help to rehabilitate. That's, when you look at an organization's values and their missions, they can be very awe-inspiring. They're well-written. We have these lofty goals that we want to make change, but then the systems that we have in place don't really allow us to do that.
Nobody gets better there, and the programs there weren't that good. I went to a new facility and I did anger management. I was there for 8 months.
The Associated Press and the University of Maryland's Capital News Service examined hundreds of lawsuits involving allegations of mistreatment and the suicide of mentally ill inmates at local jails over the past 5 years. In case after case, jails are accused of refusing inmates medication, ignoring cries for help, imposing harsh conditions, and failing to monitor inmates who might harm themselves.
It's like a jail for kids. There's a cement bed with a little mattress that you sleep on. There's no therapy. There's no accommodations at all. So it's a really difficult place to be for anyone, especially somebody who has special needs.
While in jail, she was denied her prescription medications despite repeated pleas and threats of suicide. On the 9th day, she hanged herself with a bedsheet.
You still come out of that place angry and emotional, and that place makes it worse some of the time.
Adding on to the already stressful environment, youth who identify as LGBT have a much harder time due to homophobia and transphobia. At one facility, a transgender girl was labeled an automatic sex offender when she was sent to a prison despite her only offense being robbery. They believed that her trans identity automatically meant that she was dangerous and predatory. A 2015 study shows that 20% of all youth in the juvenile justice system identify as LGBT, but even though that number is so high, the Department of Juvenile Justice does not have policies that specifically guide the treatment of LGBT youth in detention, so staff is allowed wide discretion in how to interpret and implement whatever general rules exist. 85% of LGBT youth in juvenile justice facilities are youth of color, adding to the biggest judicial issue, race. In October of 2015, 48,043 youth were held in juvenile detention centers, jails, prisons, treatment centers, and training schools. 44% of them were Black, but African Americans make up only 16% of the total youth population.
I think that mass incarceration, the juvenile justice system being a facet of mass incarceration, is innately racist.
The rate of incarceration for Black youth is 433 per 100,000 versus white youth, who have an incarceration rate of only 86 per 100,000. African Americans are 5 times more likely to be detained or committed, showing how Black people are often taken advantage of and subjected to systemic racism. 72% of incarcerated youth come from a fragmented home, meaning a parent is either absent or incarcerated themselves. And 80% come from families that either receive public assistance or make under $30,000 a year.
It starts with poverty. It starts with a breakdown in the community. It starts with a breakdown in the family. And so these things leave the kid without any structure. And then it puts them out on the street. And then they come into contact with the police, who are not necessarily trained to deal with mental health issues and or juvenile issues, so that they treat them more like adults, and then they end up in a system that is geared towards locking them up.
Children or teens that grow up not having a parent, whether it's the dad or the mother, that there's emotion on them, it hurts them. They may not act like it, but it hurts them, and it makes a change in your life, and it makes you want to act out because you miss them. You wonder why they did what they did. You want them to be in your life, everything that they missed out on. You start doing drugs because you've seen people in your house do drugs, or you're angry, so you go out with friends and try drugs, or you're angry at the people in your household or see them fight all the time, so you start fighting all the time. That's how it usually starts out.
Those kids come from generations of disenfranchised people who don't have resources, who have been incarcerated. Most of their parents are incarcerated, grandparents. So, it's a generational thing. The people without resources are the ones who typically are locked up. I mean, it's very rare that I see somebody who's wealthy detained. It's pretty clear when you go to court that, like, okay, most of the people being detained don't have the resources to either hire counsel or to have family to bail them out.
Children should not learn in prison that they have that they have value. Children should not learn in prison that they matter. Children should not be told for the first time in their life, you have a purpose in a maximum security prison. They should have heard that a long time ago from parents, from neighbors, from teachers, from bus drivers, like whoever.
If juvenile prisons do not reform so that incarcerated youth are able to merge back into society safely with the resources they need, there is no legitimate reasons for these outdated institutions to stay in place.
We don't incarcerate people and throw away the key. There are so many collateral consequences that come from having a felony. And so you take someone from their home and from whatever caused them to make the decision that they did that brought them to prison. Then they will eventually get out of prison. That time in between is essential, and they can learn lots of things, yes, but on the back end, having a felony, they are now more systemically disadvantaged to be successful, regardless of GED classes, trade skills. It doesn't work.
They need to restructure the whole thing. When a kid has issues, they should be given resources to deal with those issues. And instead of detaining them in essentially a jail setting. So the whole structure needs to be revamped. They don't need to be detaining juveniles. I mean, I used to work myself in a juvenile detention center, so I know a little bit about what that looks like.
And I think that you don't need prison. You don't need to lock people up for them to find something else to be doing with their life, to find worth, to find value.